The laws of analogy. The laws of analogy have great significance in all true religious systems, including the science of hermetics, and therefore play a most important role. In the universe, everything was created under strict legalism, and that is why everything gears into another with astonishing precision, like a most precise clockwork. In Hermetic science, the study of the practical application of this legalism is called QUABBALAH. Any Hermetic system and method, any philosophy of religion and religious system which does not, or does only partly, take into account the universal laws, is one-sided and therefore imperfect. Religious systems that acknowledge only one aspect of the law and neglect all others, or even oppose them, can only be of limited duration, though their decay may not come until after hundreds or thousands of years. Only the religious systems which take into account the absolute universal laws will be durable and last eternally. All original ideas, for example, absolute harmony, order, periodicity, etc., are reflected in the absolute legality of the universal laws. The attentive reader cannot fail to notice that already in my first book, Initiation into Hermetics, I illustrate a system for the development of the body, soul and spirit based on the universal laws, which represents the first step of initiation on the road to perfection. As can be concluded from the absolute laws, true initiation is neither a privilege of sects, nor is it dependent on any religious belief. No special mention need be made that the comprehension of the fundamental truths, that is, of the universal laws, necessitates a magic equilibrium in all three planes. He who strictly adheres to the universal laws in all three planes, who comprehends them clearly and masters them completely, is not only master of his own miniature world but also master in the universe. The practical initiation leads to this aim, and especially the knowledge of the QUABBALAH. In the practical part of this book, I have published a system dealing with the practice of the QUABBALAH in strict accordance with the universal laws. This practical system of the QUABBALAH has been existing for thousands of years and was already taught from mouth to ear in the days of yore, and later it was passed on in the schools of the prophets and in the temples of initiation of various peoples and races. Knowing the laws of analogy, the initiate may relate the law of analogy to any science, and he will always hit the right thing. If, for instance, a doctor is a Hermetic, he is forthwith also in a position to bring his knowledge into line with the universal laws and, in analogy to these, not only to find out disharmony, that is, disease, and its cause, but also to prescribe the remedy for the removal of the nidus, seat of disease, by the aid of the key of analogies. With the unique possibilities in mind and the fact that these are open to the initiate, it may be worthwhile to do good not only unto oneself, but also to become active on behalf of suffering mankind. The same key of analogies can be used in any other field and renders equally good service to the individual as well as to mankind. The expression chaos, which people are so fond of using, is only a term of ignorance. In reality, God, the highest imaginable creator, has formed everything precisely and lawfully in accordance with his principles, and it is in this legality and all its aspects that we can recognize God soonest. God, as the universal principle, is the supreme being, is incomprehensible and unimaginable. Only from his splitting process, from the creation of the universe, that is, from his works, can one draw analogous conclusions to get, at least, some idea of God's greatness and eminence. Hebrew rabbis, in the Book of Creation, Sefer Jezirah, have tried to lay down the QUABBALAH, that is, the legality of the creation. Although the Sefer Jezirah is of Hebrew origin, this does not mean that other people did not lay down the universal laws of creation, too. As in the book Sefer Jezirah, we find the history of creation laid down, in accordance with the universal laws, in the Bhagavad Gita. Also other documents, passed on in traditions, historical buildings, monuments, etc., give written and visual evidence of the universal laws of creation. In Egypt, for instance, already Hermes Trismegistus knew about the history of creation and the universal laws, which he perpetuated on the Hermes plate with the motto, as above, so below. Hermes thus gives clear witness of the fact that the miniature world, man, was created analogous to the great world, the universe. Innumerable examples could be stated for the analogies of the universal laws, but these little hints may suffice. Most analogies are dealt with in the practical part of this book, in which the Kabbalist is given exact information how, according to the universal laws, he gets a perfect command of the genuine language of the micro and the macrocosm and how he learns its practical application. In the human body, the analogies become clearly visible and they may be identified by numbers. The fact that man has exactly 10 fingers and 10 toes, and not 6 or 3, also represents an analogy which I will have to deal with in detail later in this book. The same is true of all other analogies which the reader may, for instance, find in the book Sefer Jezira, and no practical analogy needed for QUABBALAH will be disregarded, but will be turned to account. In the practical part of this book I shall also discuss thoroughly, from the viewpoint of esoterics, the individual letters with regard to the mental, astral and material world, which do not only stand for sounds but also for numbers and ideas. The QUABBALAH expert becomes acquainted with a different sort of mathematics and will be able to express ideas by numbers and, reverse, to convert numbers into ideas, and, furthermore, to translate into number and to clothe letters in numbers. By doing this, he is enabled to get to know his own self, and thus also God. The Kabbalist will understand the perfection of the laws, he will realize that good and evil, taken literally, are just religious expressions, but, in reality, both principles, that is, the positive and the negative, are necessary, since the one cannot exist without the other. The Kabbalist will always tend toward the good and never hold in disdain the negative, but learn to master it, for no useless things were created by the Creator.